one of the efforts I'm most proud of is a company called Epigram, which was a startup we founded back in the 90s, and ultimately working on home networking. We were acquired by Broadcom, and at Broadcom, we basically were one of the two companies that created the Wi-Fi industry. In fact, that's how I ended up at Apple, because Apple ended up using the Wi-Fi we created, and it's now remains in every Mac and every iPhone. Is all Broadcom Wi-Fi, all stuff that I personally had a role in. It's also why down on the right, I was elected to the National Academy and became an IEEE fellow. And I'll talk a little bit about what I learned throughout all these things. There's some big companies, a bunch of little companies I started are in here. Companies where I was a senior executive, but I didn't start like Apple. I learned lessons at all of them, and we'll go through some of them. A lot of what I've been doing now, and I'll talk a little bit about, are being on boards of directors. So every company of any size has a board of directors, and this is how, particularly in the United States, but ultimately in most parts of the world, companies have some oversight to help, among other things, protect the rights of the shareholders. I'm almost certain you guys are familiar with the purpose of boards. It becomes an interesting way to get involved with more than just the thing you're doing directly. I'm on the board of 3 public companies: Analog Devices, Marvell, and SiTime, all of which have big presences in the Bay Area, but Analog Devices is also Boston-based. I personally quite enjoy it because it's a way to take what I've learned over the years and help other companies. Analog Devices, quite big. We're about to complete a merger that will result in us being about $85 billion market cap company. Marvell, we just completed an acquisition of Inphi, and we're about $30 billion. And SiTime's a much smaller, newer public company, is about a $1.5 billion company. And then the other thing I've spent a lot of my time being involved with is nonprofits. As I mentioned, I have a PhD that was from Carnegie Mellon. So I've been on their board of trustees, which is how, again, the nonprofits end up managing themselves by having groups of people who oversee what's being done. And in some sense, it's to protect the public interest. So I've been vice chair there. And I'll talk about this towards the end if we don't run out of time, through some philanthropy my wife and I have done. I became friends with the band members, a band you may know of called Metallica. And in 2017, they created a nonprofit called All Within My Hands, and asked me if I would be willing to run it for them, which I've been doing for the last 4 years. That's been a lot of fun. We'll talk about that. And then Dawn mentioned earlier about the Viticulture and Enology Department. My relationship there, I have none with Davis, and I happened to reach out to a professor in the V&E department, and he and I became good friends. And he said, you really ought to join our advisory board. And so I did. And then they ultimately, for at least one year, made me chairman for reasons I still don't quite know. Oh, and then we have a little company that makes wine. That's sort of the relationship to both Compass Vineyards. That's the relationship between Davis and my interest in winemaking. So that's kind of my background, a lot of different things, and we'll go talk about some of that.